By virtue of the authority vested in me as regent of the Colonel Robert Rowan chapter of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, I now declare this meeting in session. Please remain standing through the singing of the first verse of the national anthem. Would you stand? Yea, I have a goodly heritage.
Thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee.
Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank thee for thy guidance and for thy abiding presence in the life of our country. We thank thee for all of those yesterdays of our human race whose lessons and fulfillments have become a heritage to us. Continue, we pray, thy blessings upon this nation, that all who are part of it may learn true nobility of manhood and womanhood. Grant us growth in understanding and increasing devotion of righteousness. In thy name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Would you join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we'll have the American Creed. I believe in the United States of America as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers are derived from the consent of the governed, a democracy in a republic, a sovereign nation of many sovereign states, a perfect union, one and inseparable, established upon those principles of freedom, equality, justice, and humanity for which American patriots sacrificed their lives and their fortunes. I therefore believe it is my duty to my country to love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, to respect its flag, and so against all enemies. And now will you join in the Star-Spangled Banner? Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? And now, Kania, if you would be so kind as to come and introduce our speaker.
First of all, before introducing the speaker, I'm just so excited and so tickled to see each of you all here and welcome you all to Scotia Village. I'm really pleased this morning to introduce our speaker, Carol Whitehead. Carol graduated with an AB degree in education from William Jewell College in Liberty, Missouri, where she met and married her college science professor in 1957. Now that guarantees a good grade, doesn't it, Carol? She attained her master's degree in education at the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. Carol loves to write having been born into a family of writers, preachers, and teachers who influenced her life of recording and solving life's happenings with pen and paper. She taught school for 33 years, raised 3 children. She was very active in her church, her community theater, gardening, travel, and music. In 2015, she won the Gilbert Chapel Distinguished Poet Award. She has published many short stories and poems. Carol has lived at Scotia Village for 5 years, so I'm especially excited for you all to hear Carol and meet her. I'm so glad y'all are here.
Now, Cornelia, you know I can't live up to any of that. I'll tell you what. But that is part of my life. And you know, one of the things I love about DAR is your patriotism, because that's the bottom line in any group. And can you understand me and can you hear me? You can hear me. Raise your hand if you can't. But anyway, I'm so privileged to be here today. And when Cornelia asked me to do this, it was quite a while ago, and it's been a kind of a tough couple of weeks. But anyway, here we are and gathered, and it's so good to see all of you beautiful ladies. I wanted to say some thank yous too, but I want to find out how many of you were alive at the beginning of WW2. If you'll just raise your hands if you were, if you came through WW2. 1, 2, 3, not too many, but I want to suggest that you take time to look at the table, because that expresses my trip to England in 1939, and it's a little glimpse of my life from a very small child. I was 5, or almost 5. But right now I also want to thank Cornelia for asking me to do this, and for Melody and Myra and Will and everybody who helped create this day today. So thank you for being here, and I love the DARs. As a matter of fact, I have to just slip this in. I always talk too much anyway. But my uncle, John Carver, was the first governor of Plymouth. He did not come over on the Mayflower, but I could be a DAR, but I have great appreciation for all of the DARs. And I do have some guests from town here too. I have Barbara Connolly, who's with us, and Nancy Reichner, and Ann Todd just moved in, and Beth Musselwhite, both live here. Well, anyway, let's get started. Judy Norris, too, I remember from a long time ago when we were doing garden clubbing for North Carolina. To get started, I just wanted to give you just a little taste of what the world looked like in 1939. The winds of war were whispering around the world as things began to change in Europe, England, France, and Germany. It was the early 30s, and memories of World War I lingered in the minds of those who would see change as inevitable. Change that would seek to annihilate a group of people to establish an Aryan race of pure German descent. It's a very, very difficult time. Winston Churchill had come on the scene, and he was very, very influential in being part of the terrible things that were going along, and he realized the terrible catastrophes that were going to come about as a result of nuclear energy, and how it was 1,000,000 more times powerful than than the weapons that they were using at that time. Of course, you know, communications were really coming along, and that contributed to being able to know all the things that were going on over there in Europe, which were very, very bad. The Germans have been blitzing for years, for months, actually planning to take over Poland for years and had already moved into Poland. And Hitler and his Nazi regime were just creating great havoc at that time. And of course, here in the U.S., we were going through a very, very difficult depression from 1929 to 1939. It was very, very hard for people to live. But our President, Delano Roosevelt, decided at that time, because of the European situation, that we should help our allies in Europe, especially France and Britain. So we didn't enter the war at that time. We didn't really enter it until 1941, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. That's when we officially entered the war and became involved. And this is where patriotism came in. And I didn't want to spend a lot of time with that because I have a whole lot more to say. But anyway, that gives you an idea of the tragedies that were going on in the world, not only in Europe, but right at home. So we packed up and got our shots and our documentation and went to the Grand Central Station and then taxied to the dock, where we got on the ship, the Holland American SS Westerland. And I want to tell you and remind you that sounds are so important to our lives from the very young, you know. And it's like music, but sounds enter into our kin. And the horn on the ship still lingers in my head, and I hear that horn as the ship moved into deep water. Okay. I want a PowerPoint right now because I want to show the ship. Now, that's not our ship. I forget, I've never done really this PowerPoint. You'll have to bear with me. Our ship was just like that, but that's our ship. And let's do number 2 also, because the passenger list with the Westerland, see our names? Professor James Carver, Mrs. James E. Carver, Master James E. Carver, and Miss Martha Carroll Carver, who was 5 years old, but not quite. So, anyway, when we got to our stateroom, there was a knock at the door, and a very tall, very handsome young man came to our door and bowed. He had on a white baker's jacket, and he bowed and said, my name is Hans, and he, in broken English, and he rolled his R's, and he said, I'm going to be your waiter for the duration of the trip, which was 4 or 5 days. Anyway, I fell in love with Hans. He was just wonderful. He took care of us every meal and set me up on a higher chair, and always, every meal, was so attentive. And always he said, lift up your chin, Carol, so I can tuck the napkin under your chin. And, you know, you remember little things like that. Anyway, forgive me for having to have my notes, but this was the first day. And the next PowerPoint I want to have is me. That's me, and I was holding a balloon, actually, because over here you will see balloonists, you'll see my science people, my inventors, the Picard brothers were a very significant time in my life at this time. My mom dressed me, by the way, you probably want to know. She dressed me in woolen leggings and woolen sweaters and a woolen little Eton double-breasted coat and a tam, a wool tam, because it was cold, walking the decks of that ship. So anyway, my mother, I was very shy. You can tell I was a very shy person, can't you? Close your mouth, Nancy. But my mother was not shy. She was from Rock Hill, South Carolina. And she plied her southern charm on anybody who would be willing to listen. And she had taken up or affiliated herself or introduced herself to a very tall, very old, handsome gentleman, and who knelt down to speak to me. And he was such a wonderful grandfatherly person. I just loved him too. And he had a handlebar mustache, and his name was Auguste Picard from Bern, Basel, Switzerland. He was a scientist. He was an inventor. And he and his brother, Jean Felix, an identical twin, created, invented, built the balloon that you see over there. And there's a big article from the National Geographic, and the bathysphere, which became the Trieste, as you remember. These, Auguste was on the ship, and we became very, very good friends, the five of us, with him during those 5 days. And during those days, Auguste and I pushed Irish potatoes down the deck of the ship on all fours with our noses. And I don't have a picture of that, but anyway, that relationship, I would love to tell you more about that, but I realized I needed to edit a lot of that. But that relationship has lasted all this time through pictures and letters. And it was discovered that Auguste was the grandfather of the young man who went around the world in a balloon. And so when we docked briefly at Amsterdam, we were at the top of the gangplank, and down at the bottom, there was a man that looked exactly like Auguste Picard. And indeed, it was Jean Felix, his identical son. So I got to meet both those and then follow up with a lifetime following these scientists and inventors. Anyway, that's a very important part of my life. Oh yes, I keep forgetting to, yes. I forget that. Yes, that is the gentleman with the handlebar mustache. And coming back on the Statendam was Jean Felix, the twin. But anyway, that's my mother, my dad, and me, and Jim's not in that picture. Okay, okay. Forgive me. I get carried away. My recollections of leaving the ship and moving ourselves to Houston were very sketchy. It was a very nice trip. It was very uneventful. It was very friendly, very nice. And making the trip to where we were going to live, in Miss Cooper's house in Houston, England, for our stay was very uneventful. So I want to have the next, I want to skip the next one, I really do, and go to Houston, the number 6. Can we do that? Number 6? Number 6? No, number 6 was Houston. That is, well, we'll just do this. I have that in there because when we got to London and to Houston, there were the bobbies on every street, and they were very friendly. They were the police, and they had their navy blue uniforms and the hat and a nightstick. I never saw a gun, and they were always very, very friendly. And so life was very, very comfortable. It was okay. And then you can do the soldiers. But we looked around, and the devastation was horrible when we saw the bombed out buildings and Germany blitzing and bombing, and the soldiers. It was a very scary time, but it still was not. It didn't bother us that much. But my mom, well, during that time, my mom and I walked to the meat market that first week, and she met the butcher, and then we went to the bakery, and that's every day we walked to the bakery and to the butcher. But you can pass that, and go on to Houston. Okay, this is the town of Houston, and this is where we were to stay and live. I do remember Miss Cooper. It was Miss Cooper's little thatched roof cottage, and I have a picture over there. I've just unearthed it. As a matter of fact, you must look at some of those over there. But I remember that she was a little brusque person, and she said, "Never did like or cotton to you Americans, but I think you'll do." And so she went to live with her sister in Aberystwyth, Wales. And a lot of the citizens did to live out the war years in safety, because Wales was a neutral zone. So she left and left us in the house for as long as we were going to be living there. I will say this. My father got to stay longer than we did. And I'll just slip this in right now. That Daddy got to stay, and we had to come home, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But he got to move the books from the Bodleian, which is the oldest library. 1602 is it. Can you understand me? 1602 is its date. And most of his scholarly work was done at the Bodleian. He got to stay and help move those books to Wales, and also the beautiful stained glass from some of the cathedrals was moved. But I want to read you something right now, if I might, from my newest book. Now, I only have 2, but I want to read a little piece that I wrote, and it's called the magic nightcap. I got a blue ribbon on this. I want to speak loudly enough so you can hear. Can you hear? It was the summer of 1939. Dr. Carlton Brown, Acer, his 18-pound Persian cat by his side, shifted his ponderous frame in the brown leather chair behind an enormous mahogany desk. With pursed lips, fingers tented, he sat talking with my father, a colleague. Placing a heavy hand on a pile of parchment manuscripts, he urged my father to carry on the scholarly work on the Northern Homily Cycle, which is the finding out how English got here. On the scholarly work on the Northern Homily Cycle at Oxford, London. Without him, my father accepted the offer. All was ready for the trip. I was 5 years old, oblivious of the fact that war was imminent and Germany had been blitzing England for months. Not the best time for us to be traveling abroad. I was happy, though, to take a trip with my 10-year-old brother and parents. Things began to change in the hustle and bustle of travel and the business of getting settled in our staterooms on the ship. Strange places, strange people, strange noises. Afraid that I would be left alone in this strange situation, I began to cry. Consoled somewhat until bedtime, that first day on the ship. Consoled somewhat until bedtime, fear again brought tears, and I clung to my dad, unable to be alone at night. Unconsolably, as tears flowed, I hung to my dad's neck, and he reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a clean, white men's handkerchief. Shaking it open, he tied a knot in each end of his linen handkerchief. He tied a knot in each corner. And as I calmed down, curious, Dad's soothing words and assurance announced that he had a magic nightcap that would grant wishes and be comfort and protection all through the night in case he had to be away for a while. I was tucked in, nightcap covering my blonde curls, and soon asleep with my dad's soft kiss on my rosy cheek. And each night, that magic nightcap was slipped on with assurance that all would be well. The rest of the story is this. Wearing a nightcap became a must every night for many, many years. Every birthday, special occasion, and stressful time, my dad presented me with an array of nightcaps as they worked their nightly magic from 1939 to 1963. And there is the original handkerchief that Daddy tied the knots in that went over my head. So I was supposed to read that a little bit earlier, but I wanted to share that with you. It was a significant thing to have that little. Anyway, back to reality here. When we had to go somewhere where we couldn't walk, we would go by taxi or motor car. And I remembered in the back seat, there was a little flip wood thing for the children to sit on a little flip seat at the knee of their parents, or if no one was in the back seat, they sat on those little children's seats. things got quite, you know, okay for us for quite a while. And of course, I was so cute, and my brother was very handsome. So then we had the shoulders coming. We had blackouts every single night, as we did when the people who went through that and way beyond 39, we were still blacking out and still using the ration books and everything concerning the war. But we had blackouts every night, and so that no bit of light could be seen from the outside. And that was a routine. We just expected to do that. But this night, shortly after we arrived, was different. We had all gone to bed when I was awakened by a shrieking siren and a calling of, "Douse all lights now! Douse all lights! Make haste to the nearest green." To this very day, when I hear that siren, it makes my blood pressure go up. And it's a chilling thing, and sound has a lot to do. So that is the very first time that we really experienced what we were dealing with regarding the situation and how serious and how dangerous it really was. So suddenly I was aware of my dad. He lifting me from the bed and slipping on my little quilted robe and slippers, helping me on, and carrying me down the narrow back stairs and actually running out the front door, down the street, Mom and Jim close behind, and the sirens ringing in my ears to this day. There were others quickly making way, and there it is. And I have another picture over there of the green. There were others quickly making their way to the meadow-like area, but as we hurried, we saw the gentle rise on the green, what was called the green. But indeed, those were the bunkers. And we were to go into the bunkers and stay until the all clear. It doesn't look like a bad scene, does it? But we had hushed voices, we held each other, and we listened to the scream of the bombs. And I'm going to read you a quick one from my first book, and it's called Air Raid, and this is it. The Bobby calls, "Lights out, douse all lights now." It's dark as Egypt, my mother says. The siren wails a warning to us all to hurry to the shelters on the green. Daddy lifts me from my bed and says, "Good girl," helps me into my robe and slippers. I see searchlights from the crack in the shade as Daddy rushes me out the door. We run with others to the bunker site, disappeared underground till we hear the all clear. Everyone is quiet as we listen. The bomb's shrill scream. I can hear it now. Then loud burst of sound as the grassy mound shook overhead. We remained calm and holding each other. The Bobby calls, all clear. That is still in my frontal lobes. That is very, very a memory. Now, we have another one. We have the thatched roof. Did we do the thatched roof? The thatched roof is number 7. Number 7. Now, that is not our cottage, obviously, but that is a thatched roof house, and there were many, many in England and, of course, in Houston at that time. The first time I became aware of danger was that night when we ran. And I didn't sleep at all when we got back, even with the nightcap. I must tell you that we did have air raids about every other night. One night, we couldn't reach the green in time, and we had to run across the street. And the neighbors had a pit where they kept the cars and did the work on the cars, and we rushed into that dank and smelly pit, and were there until the Bobby called all clear. I'm rushing. I'm wanting to tell you what we did when Daddy was at the Bodleian Library and at Oxford. Okay, we went to Buckingham Palace, and we were told that we could not make any move toward the sentries. But here I was doing all kinds of things to try to make one of the sentries laugh. And the only way they could move was in the changing of the guard. Well, I kept on, and I was just sure that he was going to smile. But if they made a move, smiled, or said anything, they lost their job immediately. So we went on, and we went riding in the double-decker buses, and my mother always had to go to the bakery, and we got sweets to eat, and we walked everywhere. But one day we were invited, all 4 of us, to the manor house of Dr. Rouse. And it was a fabulous, fabulous, typical, beautiful country home. It was surrounded by boxwoods and holly and beautiful gardens, and there was a cricket court in the side yard. And so as we were walking around, we frightened a ruffled grouse from her nest, and I saw my first hedgehog, and I was holding my daddy's hand, and then we went in for tea, and I had cambric tea. Cambric tea is a lot of raw sugar in a cup and filled almost to the top with milk, and then 2 teaspoons of tea. And that's cambric tea. So, okay, one day we went to, let's see. We've done okay. We did go to the zoo, and we went to the King's, the King's deer place where the deer were kept, and I got one of the little King's deer bit my finger. And then we went and to Ely Cathedral. Now, Ely Cathedral was one of the cathedrals that was bombed, and it's a huge, beautiful, beautiful church. I have pictures of it over there. And then let's go back to Ely Cathedral, please. Anyway, I have pictures, a picture of a soldier standing, 3 soldiers kneeling at what was probably an altar, and there were bits, it was rubble everywhere. And there was a lot of Delft tile broken, and Mother picked up a tile, and I have carried that tile and saved it, and I have it over there for you to look at, from that devastation at Ely. Now, when we looked around, we saw evidence that the Germans had destroyed a great many things at that time, but they were pushing their way into Poland, and that was where the great destruction was going on too. Of course, we went to the zoo, and I met a Milne, and that's how he pronounced his name, and I became very familiar with Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin, and I have books that are signed books, and I became very, very familiar with all the Christopher Robin stories. As a matter of fact, I painted my daughter's room with the Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin. So that was a very important time. And may I go on just a little bit more? Have I got a little bit more time? Okay. What? Not there yet. Not there yet. I want to tell them one thing. One of the most important things in my trip, beside being 5 years old, I went with Daddy and Mother and Jim to St. James Cemetery, beside one of the big cathedrals. Daddy had a big piece of parchment and some bootblack, and he took a rubbing of one of the tombstones of the 16th century priest. And we got back to the States with it and got it framed, and it was in my parents' home until 1963. I want to ask you if you have any questions. You have any questions that are burning in your mind? Yes? To England? Well, when I read the story about going to England, he had a Guggenheim to study the Northern Homily Cycle, which is how English got to be English. And so we all went with him. But it was not a very good time to travel. Yes. Well, this can be I need to tell you about the letter. This was a letter that came in September about 27th, and it, in no uncertain terms, stated it was from Joseph Kennedy, who was then the ambassador for us. And it said all American citizens need to be on one of the two ships that are going to be leaving almost immediately. Otherwise, we cannot guarantee your safety. And so we had to leave because we were definitely in danger. The Germans had seeded the whole ocean with many U-boats and had destroyed a great deal of the British fleet and ours too, or at least damaged them. And they also had a lot of air power. So we were to get on one of those ships and come home. And that was October, early October. Daddy got to stay. My father got to stay. And he was there way into, past Easter into the summer, doing his scholarly work. And I have all the love letters from Mother and Dad back and forth. But the trip on the Statendam was very uneventful. and very different. We didn't have a waiter, and we were we lived for the 5 days in the bowels of the ship, and we were not allowed up on deck at all. And my brother and I, we played cards, and we did games and things, and we did see a movie called The Hunchback of Notre Dame with Lon Chaney, which was a very interesting thing, and Mickey Mouse, who had just come about. And the kitchen had sent us a very large, Jim and me, jar of honey. And Jim kept ladling honey to me, and until I broke out in hives very badly. And to this day, I don't eat honey by itself anyway. But anyway, this is, the voyage home was a scary thing for the people up on top, but it still protected us from being frightened, even though it was a very, very dangerous time to go. We got home all right, everything was fine, and the love letters between my mother and father continued. I know I've left out all kinds of things. Yes, a question.
Where did you come home to?
We came home to, actually, the farmhouse, which we moved out of. We lived in Montclair, New Jersey, and we moved to Little Falls, which is 5 miles away, back over the tracks. And that's what we came back to Little Falls, New Jersey. And we had actually a rented house for a while. But I know this has been sketchy, and have you got any other questions?
Carol, I believe you, but at 5, did you remember all this?
I remember.
You told us.
It's right here. I remember it so well, but there are lots of things I don't remember, but I remember. Well, yeah, but I remember being, at Ely Cathedral. I remember the waiter. I don't remember the food that I ate, but I do remember a lot about that trip. But the most significant thing, one of the things, was the meeting of the Picard brothers, and then the correspondence that I kept up all these years, and then the article in the National Geographic about the grandson who made the world tour in the whatever it's called. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for being here. I have another question.
When did your father go? Come home, and was that early?
He came home after Easter in 41. Yes, yeah.
Was that as long as he was supposed to stay?
He did a lot of research and on the scholarly work, and then I don't know why he came home at that time, but I do know why he was gone. He was doing the research for the Northern Homily Cycle. So, but other questions? I know you have some other questions. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much for letting me do this. I know it was disjointed, but it was a precious time, and I have the memories over there in pictures. So do take a look at them. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. We really do appreciate you sharing that with us.
Tania has a word or two she'd like to say.
I had invited one of the Scotia friends who is DAR in Lumberton, and the reason I was especially interested in her being here was because she is descended from Major John Devon, for whom Devon Street was named. And I'm sorry she couldn't be in here. I thought she was coming. She belongs to the Colonel Thomas Robinson chapter in Lumberton. And I'll go ahead and say what I was going to say later, and then I won't take the time. I had finished the papers for Shelton Sharon. We'll sign those papers today, and I'll get them in the mail. I received notice from Kimberly Kelly. She had written to Elaine that she was interested in associate membership in our chapter. She lives in Maryland. So we explained how that process, but she also said that her 97-year-old first cousin of her grandfather, 97 years old, wanted to be an associate member of this chapter. And of course, I wrote back and said, well, first you've got to be a member of DAR and go through the same application process and so forth. So this lady, Kimberly, in Maryland had said that the cousin lives in Harnett County, but that she would help her with getting the papers and the death certificates and so forth. And so I don't know her name, but she does want to join a chapter. So instead of going through the process of voting for somebody, and I don't even know her name, but by show of hands, are you wanting to accept her as a member of our chapter? Unanimous vote. So when I get her name and address and so forth, I'll write to her and tell her that we want her to join our chapter. Also, her ancestor was Alexander McAllister, who is also the ancestor of Betty Williams and Candace Williams. And I thought that would be special for you all to get a new cousin whom you'll never meet because she's in Harnett County. Okay, thank y'all.
If you'd like to, if you need to, you can be excused, you that are visitors, if you'd like to. Okay.
Yes,
And
here's a
we'll
little
all
light
enjoy
path.
looking at your, the display. We'll enjoy
Look
that.
at this, look at this. Oh, yeah, look down under here. Look down under here.
Is this your purse?
Oh, dear, I think I dropped my pen.
Thanks again.
Thank
Is this
you.
yours?
And my books, and my hanky, and my books. And my books. And the post. You didn't do that one,
Well,
but it's marvelous.
and we'll see you later.
It's okay. I think I was trying to say.
That was absolutely wonderful to hear that. I know all of you enjoyed it so much, and we just appreciate so much Carol being able to come. Let's give her a big hand. And now our Vice Regent, Naomi, has a word. Maybe she would like to bring greetings to you. You might want just, that helps.
All right. I just wanted, can everybody hear me? I just wanted to mention that the executive board is going to be meeting the first part of June to prepare our new yearbook, which will include, of course, our programs. So if any of you have, I have already received several suggestions for programs, and I already have one or two already lined up from your suggestions. So if you have any others, please get them to me. I don't know, I can't promise we will use all of them, but we will certainly keep them and have them ready for the following year if we're not able to get them all in this year. But I want to encourage you to let me know if you have a special speaker, or if some of you have historic homes in your background and you'd like to share that. Perhaps we could plan a program where several of you could take a few minutes each and tell about your family or your program or your homes or whatever that would be of interest to us as a chapter. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. She did such a wonderful job last year on the yearbook, and we're hoping we'll be able to get it to you this year in August, mid-August. Of course, there's a lot of preparation work that will need to be done, not only the programs, but the locations for the meetings. But we will be working on that in June. Okay, now, if you will, look at the minutes. Wendy, our secretary, put the minutes on the table, and if you'll take a few minutes to glance over those from the March meeting. Is there any changes to the minutes, any corrections? If not, the minutes stand approved. Okay, and Cornelia was kind enough to bring us her report. And is there any new business that we need to talk about? Any old business that we need to complete? If not, we were hoping that this meeting could be short this month, so we will have a chance to tour some of the facility here because we've been so anxious to visit. So many of us have, Melanie, and it was so kind of Scotia Village to host us today. So I hope we'll be able to take a few minutes to especially visit with Cornelia, visit in her new abode. Also, Moores Creek is having a naturalization ceremony the 22nd of April, which is Saturday, on a Saturday at 11. If you feel that you'd like to go or can go, give me a call. We'll probably meet, possibly, it takes almost an hour and a half to travel from Fayetteville, so we probably would need to meet. They have asked our chapter to help with refreshments. And I do have on hand what we'll be carrying, water and some snacks. I already have that prepared. So if you'd like to go, we probably would need to leave around 9:30 or maybe 9. Anyway, just give me a call and we'll make plans as what time and maybe where to meet if you would like to go. Also, state conference is April 27th through 30th, and we do have 4 from our chapter that are registered to go. Of course, we had an essay winner. He'll not be able to be there, but they will be presenting the winner to the award to our winner. Of course, I'm going to receive that and bring it back and take a time to deliver it to him. May the 9th meeting is at 12 noon at Highland Country Club. And Bruce Dawes, who we all know from Fayetteville, who is such a wonderful historian, is going to come and bring us a message from the SAR and let us know what's going on with them. Also, the book club will be meeting May the 10th on a Wednesday. Our meeting will be on the 9th, Tuesday at Highland. and we will be installing our new officers at that time. And the book club will meet the next day, Wednesday, at Ellen Jordan's home. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jane, is Jane Peacock still here? Elaine, maybe you know, was that meeting going to be at 12? And bring a sandwich or,
They didn't say, but we'll notify everybody, we'll notify the whole club. So if any of you are interested in coming, you're welcome to have it. Ellen's home is much larger, and she has more room, for as many people as can fit in there.
and her address is in the yearbook, of course.
I'll let you know if it's lunch. She may be providing lunch, but I have a feeling it'll be bring your own.
I talked with her on the phone. In fact, she called Monday telling me she would not be able to come today, and she did say 12 o'clock, and to bring whatever you'd like, and she'll have the drink. She'll have us something to drink. She was so sorry, Ellen was, that she couldn't come today, but she was dog sitting for her son, and some way it was just not going to work for her to be gone all day today. Is there any other announcement? If not, Cornelia, would you or Melanie like to explain how we can tour this wonderful facility?
Okay, so I'm sure there's some of you that may or may not want to. We were just going to do kind of some mini tours. So if you are just wanting to go see Miss Holmes's apartment, I completely understand. I will not be offended. If you want to see a little bit about Scotia, there's several of us that we can kind of pair off. Even if you're on the bus and you're just like, I'm just wore out, I want to just kind of sit down. We have a little gathering room that you can sit out while everybody kind of does this 15 to 20 minute, just a quick little tour. I do have a sheet that if you would like to come back and have a formal tour, which means you can actually spend the night and have dinner and lunch with us and get to meet some of the people at residence. You can leave your name and number, and I'll be glad to follow up. But we do have overnight stays that we're available for. So, Ms. Holmes, if you, yeah, just depending on how many how many actually want to.
It's not a lot of them, it's someone. Because they've got the room she spoke of to do the sit down.
Yeah, the gathering room is right across from here, and it's just a big living room. So if you just want to sit there and you rode the bus and you just want to kind of relax.
See my,
And if
down half of it.
okay, so do you want to go on a tour, or do you just want to see the apartment? Both, okay.
We'll go see my apartment, and those of you that wanna follow me, and there are 3 of you all, I believe. So whoever wants to follow me upstairs to see my apartment, then we'll come back downstairs and see main floor.
There we go.
There are also 2-bedroom apartments, there are villas, houses, all kind of things outside, which is wonderful. People who, we have a lot of the couples that live in houses. And, but anyway, if you wanna go upstairs, we'll leave you me, go, you stay with Melanie. And then, we'll is alcohol.
Well, you
And be sure,
you bought, nobody owns the house. You are just renting the house. It's an easement. Yeah. So she wanted me to explain to you guys. So whenever you live in a continuing care retirement community, whether it's Scotia or other ones that are across the state, especially with nonprofit, you never own the residence. So you don't own the apartment or you don't own the 2-bedroom villa. That you are paying an entrance fee, which most people think, oh, I'm buying the house or I'm buying the apartment. What you're paying for is what we call is a prepaid medical expense, which is a huge tax write-off, especially if you have a lot of capital gains on selling your house, which has been what has happened the last 2 years. The market's kind of settling back down. but it's a big offset because when you're here, even after you move in, your monthly fee, a percentage of that monthly fee, you write off on your taxes because that's what you're paying for, is what we call pre-care, is prepaid medical expense. So you never own anything, so you never have to pay taxes again. You know, you have, Claire Mansfield has one of the best stories ever. She said, I always said after I got my first million that I was going to hire me a chef, a groundskeeper, a private driver, and a housekeeper. She never got her first million, but she's got all four living at Scotia. So that's something to think about. But again, my card's over there if you want to. I know it's been a long day. Y'all have to travel and stuff